Hello, everyone. Welcome to Weekly Manga Recap. It's January the 15th of 2025. Guys, I hope you're ready for some new manga because there is none. Well, there's none. There's
I was gonna say
no jump this week.
there is still like a Chainsaw Man. I think there's
Marriage Toxin had a chapter.
There's 2 chapters of Black Clover that came out,
and Dandadan had a chapter.
Fuck me, we're gonna have Boruto next week. Do you ever just have that moment like the week before where you're like, ugh, all right, how many days do I have left? 5.
There we go again. Yeah,
little joys.
And then, unfortunately, it gives us so much material to riff on. So I guess this.
Yeah, we're simple monkeys, you know, doing our flips for the music box. We got to do what we can for the audience.
It's the curse that keeps on giving.
Yeah, they yearned for more Boruto discussion.
So in place of having a regular episode, since there's only a handful of series that we could talk about at all, we're going to do a Q&A episode. We've got a backlog of questions that you guys have submitted. Actually, it looks like the oldest one that we haven't gotten to is from a year and a half ago.
2023. But that's why we didn't do like a bunch of like calls for questions because there was still quite a few in here. So if we do by some miracle go through everything here, we'll just throw it out to the audience then or something like that. But I think we have quite a few here to go through still.
Yeah. So we'll go through these and we'll just see where it takes us, which is always typically weird places because I don't know. I think that we exhausted all the normal questions we could have possibly taken in like 2013 or something like that. So they're all weird now.
Yeah. It is worth noting that our first question is Halloween themed to a certain extent.
That's not too bad. That was only a couple months ago, right?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's all the same Halloween, right?
Yeah.
But
we all enter a time vortex every Halloween, so it's all just a loop.
Also, this will be a small little nostalgic treat for some of our audience members who are like, "Oh yeah, I guess I did ask that to them a year and a half ago." I'm so sorry. We love you guys so much. Do you want to start or shall I?
You start.
Sure. Our first is from Ninja X3I, who says, Tree Nicholas Freeman or Quinn Rollo T. Reed Larios are beloved podcast hosts. No doubt this horribly forced pun will fit right into this Q&A in probably like May or August. No, much earlier, we'll have you know.
Well, maybe.
Okay, Nick, is it May or August in the calendar year we're in now?
No.
Exactly.
You're right, Quinn. You're right.
We're good.
Silly to question your logic.
I have some spooky questions to go with it. Number 1, what song, in your opinion, is the least scary when given a horror movie? Also, I have to interrupt myself, but Nick, don't you mean movie trailer slowed down treatment? Additionally, I want Quinn to give the most and least scary examples for specifically Sonic the Hedgehog music.
So, I don't know movie trailers well enough to actually have real examples of this. I mean, well, because like I remember, you don't
watch movie trailers, is what you mean.
Well, I don't go to the movie theaters very often.
Sure.
So I don't tend to see, or at the very least, like, so 2 things. 1, I don't go to the theaters very often, and 2, when I am on like YouTube, I use an ad blocker. So
no, that's very fair. But like you're familiar with the concept though of like music gets slowed down.
You take a song that seems, upbeat or optimistic, and then you slow it down, and it's creepy now.
Yeah. Like one of
The
the very
Pinocchio song was in Age of Ultron.
yeah. I always go to the I got five on it that was in the trailer for Us, and you were
Mm,
like, ah, yes. If you slow this down, this is a kind of unnerving song.
right. Um, and so are you asking, like for real examples or like a theoretical example in
I
terms of that, I guess?
I assume. I think both are kind of interesting when you think about it. I mean, obviously, there's been no scary Sonic the Hedgehog movie, so my example, I do believe I'm supposed to find real examples for. But Ninja's noting in the chat theoretical, Nick. So
Theoretical. Um, okay. Well, there are those songs that kind of have like lyrical dissonance in them. So when you slow them down, they just kind of sound more natural. So for example, if you were to do "Hey Ya" by
mhm.
Outkast, there are people who have done like like acoustic or unplugged versions of that. When you listen to it, it's like, oh, this is actually like a tragic song because all the lyrical content is like about like a relationship going bad, and it's like, oh, this fits. So I think it would have to be something like that where it's already wrong because it's at a fast upbeat pace, and then when you slow it down, it's like, oh, that just sounds natural. It's no longer creepy because it now fits. The entire point
Yes.
of like, oh, it's creepy now is like, oh, you shifted this, you shifted the Barney song to a minor key and slowed it down, and now it sounds
Ah!
weird. So I love you.
You can make it work for a lot of things. I mean, there's some songs that do have like an innate hilarity to them that it's
Sure.
more difficult. Like, you could slow down Rebecca Black's Friday, but like at some point you're like, I know what this is naturally like though, and this is some dork ass shit.
Sure. The songs that are very like memeable,
Yeah.
or like kind of like pop songs that everyone hates as well, I think.
Yeah.
So yeah. We built this city.
This kick ass city as a tower falls down. What's the plot for this movie? Because in my mind, I'm thinking disaster movie. Like we built this city. Like Nashville's getting destroyed. They're like, we built this city on rock and roll, and look
Mhm.
how fragile that is. It
We were
stood.
fools to use rock and roll as a foundational element of this city.
Rock and roll stood no chance against the power of Mother Nature.
And also there's zombies,
Oh
because
no!
the power of rock and roll within the city when it went wrong and it's corrupting
It was
everything around.
unholy. They were trying to tell us for so long this devil's music was going to corrupt
Everyone,
us.
that's right. They were right the whole time. Yes.
I would be shocked, or I should say, I would not be shocked rather if this does not end up being the plot to an upcoming Angel Studios movie.
I was stunned when I learned of like rapture movies that are sincere.
Mm-hmm.
Like when I learned that those are actually a thing. Yeah, obviously they're not like huge wide releases, but there was one that I think was like all about the rapture happening and people not getting to go to heaven because they were pro-choice. Like it's
Yo, the
just
propaganda was real back then.
just bald faced, you're not going to heaven. And it's like, there's got to be like, some element of tongue in cheek. No, no, just,
No, I can tell you for being in it, that's not. And I said back then is that that's not the current sentiment as well. Sometimes,
oh, sure.
there's a lot of those. I will answer specifically the Sonic ones here. So, I found a couple that did not work. I put all these at basically point 0.5 speed. So two I found that did not really work with it whatsoever. One was Rusty Ruins from 3D Blast, which just got kind of, I don't know, it's like groove going on to it. It's almost more natural that way. And then Hilltop Zone from Sonic 2 is already kind of like a kickback kind of song for the Sonic. And when you slow that down a lot more, you're like, I wouldn't mind sitting off on one of this Hilltop Zone on like a rocking chair, looking out over the canyon, listening to this. That's the kind of body experience I want. Um,
Speaking, by the way, before we move on, of movie trailer music and Sonic the Hedgehog,
Ooh.
do you remember the original Sonic the Hedgehog trailer that, had the ugly Sonic that everyone hated?
Wasn't it like Gangster's Paradise or something
Yes.
crazy?
Yes. So someone took that and they basically made like a Sonic the Hedgehog stage music based around Gangster's Paradise. It slaps.
Does
It's
it?
very fun because
Okay.
it's all like Genesis sound fonts and stuff, and Gangster's Paradise is a really catchy song. So
Yeah.
yeah.
All right, I could dig that. For most scary, I found the Robotnik theme from Sonic 1 is pretty scary when you slow it
Ooh,
down. That's
yeah.
like an unnerving song.
Love
But
that song too.
weirdly, Green Hill Zone, like obviously once more of the melody picks up, it gets a little too high energy to be scary, but like the first like kind of opening notes or so at 0.5 speed is a little unnerving. I could see like turning something into a scary scene like this. Like
Hmm.
compose something like that for like the Metal Virus saga in the Sega comic or the Sonic comics or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah. Um, I I have heard some covers of Green Hill Zone, like John Baptiste, the pianist, did a version of that on his big album.
Nick, I want to play a game.
Oh no!
You're each trapped in a room with a table. Upon the table, this is what Jigsaw sounds like. Rubble, rubble, rubble. Would you have the more appropriate Jigsaw voice?
I want to play a game. You're each trapped within a room with a table. Upon that table is a different food item for each of you. For Nick, a 24-pack box of brown sugar cinnamon. A brown sugar cinnamon Pop-Tarts. For Quinn, a bottle of honey mustard, along with enough. Insert your favorite food to eat with honey mustard here.
Chicken. Let's say chicken tendies.
With enough chicken tendies to consume it.
Oh, you made chicken tendies for me.
You didn't say chicken tenders.
Yeah.
However, these aren't ordinary Pop-Tarts and honey mustard. The filling of each Pop-Tart has been mixed with chocolate, while the honey mustard has been mixed with blended rotten egg jelly bean.
This is
Eating
fucked
all your
up.
specified food item will unlock your room, which will start to fill with acid in 1 hour. Live or die. Make your choice.
This is fucked up. Nick's thing's still food. Mine is like a chemical experiment designed to be as revolting as possible.
I imagine that I would probably have the easier.
I certainly, right?
Like, yeah, rotten egg jelly beans are designed to make you go "Ugh," when you have one that is this big. Like, so.
I will like I'll note that like I'll be honest, while I will have chicken tendies here, I will try to do this, but I am almost certainly just chugging a bottle of honey mustard because I'm like,
Right, that's actually the other thing. You don't technically.
like I don't really want to fill up on chicken tendies and like kind of flavor those two together. I don't know if I told people this. I couldn't brush my teeth for like a week after, or I had trouble rather brushing my teeth for like a week after I ate those rotten egg jelly beans because the first thing I did after doing that podcast was brushed my teeth to get the taste out. And then for like the next couple days, every time I'd brush my teeth or think about it, like the taste would come back into my throat. And I'd be like, oh, how is it? Like I just kept connecting the two. And I was like, this sucks. So
You needed to like get some milk first and wash it down or something.
yeah. So this would be a situation where I would save the chicken tendies for the end. That was a reward if I can get through this whole bottle. I assume there's also got to be like a reverse bear trap on me or something, right?
I think that the real challenge for me, because you have the advantage of, yes, you have to go through blended rotten egg jelly bean, but you can, like you said, chug a bottle of honey mustard.
Yeah.
But I have to eat 24 Pop-Tarts.
That's an endurance.
In an hour? My God.
Honestly, you might have the worst time if only because that's a lot of volume. Like, I don't think
It's all
not
sugar, too.
I was gonna say I don't think non fucked up Pop Tarts I could eat that many in a row without kind of getting sick.
I would, if it were regular brown sugar cinnamon Pop-Tarts, I'd be like getting through 6 and be like, okay, yeah, I think I'll get through it. And then I get through half the box and I'm like, oh.
Okay, I can't do anymore,
My
guys.
heart won't. My heart sounds like it is a hum right now. It's beating so fast.
Yeah, I think I will try. I have no idea,
Right.
but I'm not gonna go out like a bitch. Like I'm not like again. Who knows what the alternative? He's like, and if you don't, this fucking anvil full of spikes is gonna be inserted into your ass. Like, okay, well, I'm
Yeah, the
definitely.
room fills with acid.
Oh,
In
the
an
room
hour,
fills with
so
acid. Yeah, that's. I'm definitely gonna try. Like, I don't.
try.
Yeah,
Yes.
might as well. All right, Nick. Next question.
Yes. This next question comes to us from Ota. I'm not going to do the whole bit because I have hated that since I was a child. But we are referred to as Nickelodeon Quinn, which is a pretty
That's a great
clever.
one. That's a great
Yes.
double pun. Honestly, if we ever got a ship, like if there was a ship of us, it should be called Nickelodeon Quinn.
That's yeah.
It's a pretty good one.
First question for Quinn. What would your One Piece laugh be? Nick can look it up and see if it's already taken.
I'm almost positive this isn't, but this is an old classic of our family, the unso. It's kind of laugh you do whenever like a person falls and you're just kind of just like
So something that is certainly adjacent. How would you describe the spelling of that?
UNCE is how my family always spelled it.
Okay, well, either Oda has been spelling it wrong, or you're in the clear.
Okay,
So,
well there we go. All right,
yeah.
guys. Canonically, if I'm in One Piece, that's my laugh.
Question number 2. What's a manga plot you think that you'd love if it were just written by someone else? And who is that someone else? So, for example, if you were to take Seven Deadly Sins and have Oda write it instead.
So I have maybe a. I don't know. I felt like I was cool writing this, and now I feel like I might be me.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
I said Mission Yozakura Family, but I would well hold on. I would love to see it written by Akasaka, who did Kaguya-san.
Okay.
And I was like, I feel like I would enjoy like a spy romance series with a little bit of like comedic action in it, but I'd want to like the romance more. But I realize that's just me asking for like me being like, hey, I see you gave me this piece of art. Could you change to something completely different though, just for my sake?
Right.
And I feel kind of like a bitch about that.
I understand where you're coming from there. I think I'll start some fights and say that I would like Delicious in Dungeon if it were written by somebody who was funny.
Whoa!
So
You didn't even try to get. You weren't even trying to be nice. You were like, let me throw out an example. Just like
no.
you just went full hard in. You're like, maybe if someone who could write a joke worth a damn told it.
Pretty much. Yeah.
All right.
And there you go.
Let it be known, guys. When a manga is like before us and it's like Akane Banashi, like they are to get judged by the Arakawa 4. Nick is a show. He is the one standing firm and tall, just like no. And I'm like Ken. I'm just like, yeah, dog, you fucking ruled. It was wacky. That was kind of funny.
Why is he Ken? Right? What? I don't remember his name actually from American Idol. I don't know his name.
Simon Cowell?
No, the opposite.
Oh, Randy Jackson. Oh,
Randy
yeah, he was
Jackson.
like, yeah, dog, man, you kind of
dog, I was feeling you.
We were vibing, we were having a good time. Like, that just kind of feels like a Ken's energy. Like, if that was the American Idol cast, like, that was the panel, he would definitely be the Randy Jackson of the group.
Okay. I'm trying to think of how the other Arch 4 fit into any judges that have been on American Idol. I don't think that any of them are a good fit.
Well, Nick, we've wandered into this crisis ourselves. We have to get ourselves out of it.
No, we don't. It's not a question. Let's go. Question 3. Have you ever felt frustrated that a piece of media that you love was memed to a point that people didn't bother to give it a fair chance? An example they give is the Tidus laugh from Final Fantasy X, and as someone who has never played any Final Fantasy, I can definitely tell you that yes, the main identifying thing that I am aware of is the Titus laughing scene.
But it's
But
so good.
I have also heard people defend it with the context of it's supposed to be cringe,
Yes, it
basically.
is. It is supposed to be them laughing at the face. It's oh god, it's such a great game. I truly I started just watching people do like speed runs of it or like weird
Mhm.
challenges essentially as like background music, and I just like am reminded of how much I love that game. So that's a good one. I don't know if this one counts exactly, because people obviously love these movies, but the X-Men movies told a generation of people that Cyclops was like a cuckold boyfriend,
Right.
like Boy
Yeah.
Scout that nobody liked, and that's just not the character. Like that's just not who Scott is. He is, I guess, sometimes that when you pair him with Wolverine, but like that guy's got a lot more complexities going on. I get kind of
Yeah.
bummed that people like write him off that way.
Because a few months ago, Nicole and I watched the first two movies. We're kind of like bracing ourselves before we get to the third one because
The
of
third
course we
one's
have to.
rough.
It's hard. It's hard. But I mean, at least when we get to Wolverine, it's like it's so bad that you can kind of enjoy how bad it is. But the third
Yes.
one's just ugh, yeah. But
I
anyway, but we were making the constant observation of wow, it was not just the third movie that just really shit on Cyclops. Like
no.
he's barely in the second one.
He's
Like I was
he's
shocked.
barely in it. In the first one, he exists to have every line he says be responded to by a cooler line by Wolverine, basically.
Yeah. They don't come across as even like rivals. It's just like
Yeah.
the guy that's there who is in an established relationship with Jean that Logan can kind of be, you know, not even angry about. That's the other thing is that
Yeah.
like Wolverine's like so protagonisted in those movies that like, the fact that he is the one who is, doing some things that he kind of shouldn't in terms of like how he approaches someone who is in an established relationship, and also don't do that at all. But but it's like, oh, but he's Hugh Jackman, so obviously.
Yeah, it's one of those things I'm like, look, I get it. Cyclops or like Wolverine is the much cooler character. He's gonna hit the quadrants more, but it bums me out because Cyclops really got done dirty by that for a while. And
Mhm.
we're only just now, I think, starting to like kind of see mainstream attention turn back the other way with him.
Yeah. I don't have a meme answer because I know that there is one that I would say, but I can't think of it right now. And it's
Yeah.
like I've said it before. Like I have to be like, no, it's good. But in a related answer, in terms of like a thing that some people aren't willing to give a shot to that I really enjoyed, was I learned not too long ago that a lot of people think The Green Knight is a terrible movie. And I was like, "You're wrong,
Yeah, you're
though.
just
It's
objectively wrong. It's an incredibly
it's an
you could
amazing
say
movie."
you could say you don't like the movie, that's fine, but like to say it's bad is wild. People just don't understand movies anymore.
The only thing that I could
I
say
should say
to
anymore.
people who did watch and didn't like it is you went into the movie thinking it was going to be something that it wasn't,
Yeah.
and that is maybe not your fault, but it probably is. But it's at the very least the marketing's fault, because if you're at all aware of the original story, you should have known that there was going to be no action in it, basically. Um, and that's our questions
Yeah.
for that. So thank you, Oda.
Yes. All right. We have For I Am a Gentleman says, after years of the recap, who are your favorite OCs who have plopped into series on occasion? I don't mean wacky characterization like hashtag Ray or Foghorn Uabach. I'm talking about the wholly new characters inserted to comment on the going-ons. They list their favorite, but hide it from us so as to, I guess, not taint our answers. Unfortunately, I am an idiot. I had to look at your answer because I wasn't even sure of a character, and then I was like, "Oh, okay," and I thought of some.
I have to say that if you give us too much credit for remembering the things that we say on this show, so
It is like an unfortunate thing that I'm like, I don't like. I had to look. I was like, did Ninja keep a list of those fucking anyway? Like, because I'm like, I could even look at like episode titles and be like, I don't know what we were on that episode, but Magooly McGillibuster was a fucking character, I guess, because I named the whole episode after them.
Yeah, because I don't really like have examples of those. The advantage of the like interpretations of some characters, are the ones we have wacky voices for, is that they're recurring because the characters we base them on are recurring. Can you imagine if I just did a goofy voice one time while we were doing New Sexorcist instead of attaching it to the protagonist? I might entirely forget that I did that goofy voice in one of the chapters for that series. So for this exact type of example, I don't have an answer in terms of something we've invented whole cloth. I can say for maybe one that's a little bit of an overlooked or not so recurring character that is like based on someone who's in the series we talk about. I've always really, really liked the joke we had where we had Tokoyami be under the impression that his quirk was him being a bird, and that everyone has a dark shadow, and he's just like, maybe all of you your dark shadows just can't find you because you don't look like bird people like me.
You guys seem to have an issue. You should really fix it.
And I guess that does technically lead to an OC, I guess, which is the one person who's like, I know he's saying nothing, but what if he's right? What if my dark shadow just can't find me?
There's the one person who has too much anxiety. They're like, I think I need to start actually being concerned that I don't have a dark shadow. Like, I should get on that. I have the answer of similar to the answer that you have of the Totsuki Institute accountant who is just like, what are we paying for? This is crazy. I always enjoyed the one guy in Toriko who does not care. He's just like, it's fine. You're all kind of making a big deal about this. I don't know why. I don't know why we're having a parade for corn. It just seems I have to get to the store, which of course is made of marshmallow sandwiches. So that's
my car is an open-faced sandwich as well. Of course it is.
which is, and there's mayonnaise on it, which is great in these summer mornings. But also...
People pointing out Hambone Jackson, of course.
Yes.
Yeah, right.
I sometimes wonder, though, like in that same way, like you just like your anxiety like makes you think about stuff too much. I'm like, I didn't fever dream code into existence, did I? Like, this wasn't like a bit of mine that like Kishimoto heard about. And he's like, that sounds pretty good. I'm gonna add this to the podcast.
No, he's got leather. He's got leather on his body too, like as part of him. Okay, cool.
Yeah, he's got straps everywhere. That's how he fights, or it's just long leather studded straps for some reason. But he loses a lot. Oh, interesting. Yeah, so good question there. Thank you from For I Am a Gentleman.
Yeah, excellent. Next question is going to come from Gelly Elfson. Why do you think people want live-action versions of animated properties, whether it's manga anime, or Disney, or even a few projects from Cartoon Network and Nickelodeon? It just seems like an odd trend. This is for multiple reasons. One is expense. Animation, costs a lot to do, which is why that it took a lot longer for animation to become, have like full length features. Even way back in the day, it was first limited to shorts. Proof of concept is hard to come up with because you have to spend all the money in order to animate something, as opposed to just tell someone, well, we're going to put I don't know, like Benedict Cumberbatch in a whatever, and immediately you have like, well, people will see a trailer and they'll see Benedict Cumberbatch and they'll be like, ooh, Benedict Cumberbatch, and they might want to go see it. And also there is just the fact that there is a perception that animation is for kids. It's not for adults. There are exceptions, but typically you have to have like some sort of big thing to get people to convince them to go and see an animated feature that's not a kid's movie. It has to be like, it's like, oh, there's an anime like Lord of the Rings movie and stuff. It's like, yeah, but that's Lord of the Rings. There's the one of the biggest movie franchises of the century. Had like HBO and stuff going on with it, and it's like, oh, and we got Peter Jackson back to doing stuff. There's all these things, a Miyazaki film, which is still also in some way like considered like kids fare as well.
Sure.
But that's like with all of the reputation that has been built up over the course of decades with Studio Ghibli. So it's a lot of different things. So that's why they're like, well, if we just do live action, then people will want to go see it, and it's cheaper for us to make. And that's
yeah. There's a lot of those factors that play into it, yeah. And also things to remember is just like things go in trends. Like right now, these things make a lot of money, but they're not always going to. And once that happens, they'll stop, and we'll probably get some kind of cool animation to replace it at some point. But at the same time, a lot of these are being made by studios that are just like want money, basically. And sadly, it's, when you remake something, it is going to inherently interest more people. When you remake something popular, I should say, it is going to inherently be more interest to people than just describing a brand new property to them. Now, that is, of course, like a parasitic thing. Like, you can't do that forever, but I mean, they're going to do it as long as they can. Like, Moana 2 just made like 500 million globally, so I don't know what to tell you. It's still profitable, so until it's not, we're gonna get it.
There's also like a perception that it was supposed to be for an animated series, and they were like, "No, we're not going to do that. Actually, just put it in theaters," and then it worked, which a lot of people are concerned about that worked. So
now it remains to be seen if it would work again. They might have poisoned. Yeah. I have not heard a lot of people say like, "Oh no, I had a great time at Moana 2." Maybe some families were like, "It was fine" or whatever, but that might have quieted, a bit of the eagerness for that franchise. We'll have to see. But yeah, good question. It's one I hope we don't have to deal with too much. I hope this is a trend that does go away at some point soon. We have a question here. This is a long one from Noth4. It says, "Dear Nick, I was going to kill Markov at the end of Laxus' arc, but my editors wouldn't allow it, so I had to come up with a new ending on a whole arc in 2 weeks. That became the Erasion 6 arc. Time. And Rolo, so Rave Master was mostly planned out, and Fairy Tail went way longer than I originally planned, so I figured it was mostly going to be improv from week to week. I didn't get to finish outlining Eden Zero before I had to come back, so I'm going to do a bunch of ideas that I'm going to figure out as I'm writing. We'll see how this goes. T." This is not for, and those are real things Hiro has said in an interview. And there are basically, I want to read this whole thing, but I would eventually just be like reading like a small essay to people. So I did kind of boil this down to just a question. So now if I have read all this, and if you want to read the whole thing, audience, you can if you go to the Google Doc. But in the interest of getting all the questions, just going to kind of boil down to some of the answers or some of the actual questions being asked here, which is, with all this knowledge of Hiro being revealed to you, which is that he has said these things in interviews and sort of expressed that his own writing may not be the strongest, do you have a worse opinion of him, a better opinion of him, or somehow both?
It hasn't really affected my opinion of him.
Yeah, I would say it does not change my opinion, really, of Hiro. But that's to say, I don't hate Hiro, like the human being. I just think his art's not that interesting.
I think that his production, like the fact that he has maintained the output that he has, and just seemingly is still constantly producing new stuff, is amazing. I hope that he takes care of himself in order to maintain that output. That being said, a lot of the stuff that he does is generally not my cup of tea. In terms of the plot of some of that, his stuff having to be editorially mandated, and so maybe that's why it's bad, or some of it being rushed because he didn't have time to plan it out, and that's why it's bad. I understand that. There are still some storytelling decisions that are not fully explained by those, because at the end of the day, yes, even if it was like first draft stuff, you did still come up with it and put it on the paper. It doesn't matter, how fast you were rushing to do something, you did still have, a million BDSM fetishes show up for no reason. You did still have that girl have a bomb stuffed up her butt and fall in love with the guy who stuffed the bomb up her butt. And I don't know if that can be explained away by, well, he didn't have time to plan or editorial mandates. That being said, I think that, he has also produced some stuff that I do like, even within Eden Zero, especially early on. There was stuff that I did legitimately like. Not a whole lot, but I grew fond of certain characters. And so that's, worth keeping in mind. And it doesn't really change my opinion, however, because I think as time has gone on, as we've been on this show, we've grown to expect that kind of thing to come up for mangaka that are in demand. Of like, no, you gotta make more, you gotta come back. No, you gotta make sure that, like, you do the thing that, like, we think keeps the series popular, as opposed to maybe doing the more narratively risky thing to do. And so it's nothing that I hear that shocks me when I hear it. And especially at the time, like the times in our lives when we were experiencing a lot of Hiro stuff on this podcast, not a lot that is said there really shocks me.
Yeah, I think that it's always interesting to get a level of that context. I think we actually get asked about this a little bit further on as well, but it's nice to have that context of like, oh, okay, cool. Like Hiro also is kind of aware his shit's doo doo sometimes. Like, good to know because there are like Uva bowls and shit like that out there who will like just make garbage and be like, no, it's actually everyone else's fault. But that said, it's it doesn't really change my thoughts on him. I think Nick kind of put everything together there pretty good. So the next question we have here is, would you be interested in doing a bonus podcast that's just studying and discussing a bunch of behind the scenes materials and interviews with Hiro? And to that, I will say never, but I don't think I find Hiro interesting enough to warrant the amount of time that would have to be invested into researching and rereading all of Hiro's stuff. To give maybe a similar example, Zack Snyder put out the Rebel Moon movies on Netflix. And the original cut is not R-rated, and it is shorter than his full vision. He had to edit the original versions down, and then he got to re-release them. I watched the first two original versions that are cut down, and I was like, well, these suck. Not a good time. I don't think I'd really want to go watch this again. I've had a friend of mine tell me, who watched the full versions, he's like, you didn't even watch the same movie. You have no idea the context that you're missing, like the amount of plot lines that they cut, the weird ways violence is like shied away from to make the clean cuts for the PG cut, all that sort of stuff. Like, it is a more interesting movie. And I'm like, that's great. I am never going to watch it to find out, though. It is unfortunate the version I saw was not the complete one, but I didn't like the first version enough to want to watch it again to see if this one's going to be better. It's just like, finite time on this planet and everything.
Yeah. It's kind of like, and in the same realm of the Zack Snyder stuff, when all the stuff about the Snyder Cut was coming out, it was like, yeah, but I didn't watch the one that went into theaters, so
yeah,
that doesn't appeal to me. You have to be into, and that's kind of the reason why a lot of the like behind the scenes stuff that they push is like, creators who are very, very, very successful, like Zack Snyder, or
sure,
like the Beatles or whatever. If you were getting into non-visual media. So yeah, that's not really something that I think that I would be into either.
Nick and Quinn, can each of you select a mangaka who you'd want to pair up with Hiro to write a new manga while he does the art? There are qualifications saying like this is like good quality early fairy tale Hiro art where he was kind of at his most expressive and inventive.
I can imagine that maybe like he might be a good fit for like maybe one the Mob Psycho 100 and One Punch Man, who is not the best artist themselves, but put them with a really good artist and the series becomes mega popular.
Sure.
I also could see maybe, I don't know why this one occurs to me. Like, I'm not saying I would like it, but I feel like someone that he might have some sort of synergy with would be, I can't remember their name off the top of my head, but the creator of Gantz.
Oh, wow. Okay, yeah, I mean, there's a certain part of their brain that's definitely going to link up.
And I would prefer Hiro's art. So
Okay. I just thought, I was like, I think the stuff that's like good about Hero's art is when he has characters get to like express positivity and excitement and like overcoming a challenge that's rarely ever earned. So I said Yoshifumi Tozuka from Undead Unluck. Because while I love Undead Unluck's writing at times, its art, some of the characters do kind of blend together. I don't think Hiro can draw a daddy quite like Rip, but I'm willing to take that sacrifice for the team to just kind of filter some more diverse designs out. Hopefully,
I think that the males would have more diverse designs.
Yeah, but I mean,
Okay, so
I don't have a choice. There's also a question that is, which brings me to my next point. Hiro, by all accounts, seems to be a nice guy, but he's clearly not human. He grew up in the mountains where a lot of old Japanese legends happens. I think that he is secretly a supernatural being trying to connect with humans through manga, which would explain some of his writing choices. Which Japanese creature do you think Hiro is to have such an unholy workload and still a full 6 hours of sleep? I simply responded back, what is the horniest yokai? I don't know, but he's that one.
there are some very horny ones.
Yeah, are there any that really are into BDSM or anything like that? He's that one.
Probably. There's a lot of yokai, so yeah.
Yeah. So Mommy Leather, he's that one. And then, sorry, I think there is one last question here at the very end. Yes, finally, with Kinnikuman getting a new anime, there's a good chance the manga will finally get an official release. And does this mean it'll shoot to the top of the WMR recommendation list? To this, I say maybe, but that is a very, very long series, which means any kind of official translation will take years to get anywhere significant. But let's say we live in a world where it all magically drops on our laps tomorrow. Sure, absolutely. I'd probably shoot it up to the top just as like a morbid curiosity thing. But if we do get an official translation, I would expect it to take quite a while to get it.
Kinnikuman has been something that I've definitely had on my radar for like 16 years. I've wanted to read it. But, I mean, the big problem, of course, has always been that, yeah, there is no official translation of it. And even like back in the time with that, I would, more freely look for unofficial stuff. It was not very good quality stuff because Kinnikuman's an old series too. So like the image quality was not great. So that would definitely make a big difference in terms of us being able to cover it. Maybe if it gets released, it might be like segmented somehow, and maybe we could potentially take it in chunks if they're a nice, clean, dividing lines, like the way that like Dragon Ball tends to be separated out now.
I love Loom Ramayasha. You could review Ultimate Muscle. That's only 29 volumes. Yeah. So maybe at some point, but maybe that's on Quinn's mystery list of wild manga recommendations to take this year.
That's crazy that it was the sequel series that got the English anime first. So.
It is wild. But thank you, Not4, for your questions.
All right.
Nick, you have to say it. You look, you were the one who picked the order. Yeah. You could have counted ahead.
Loquas asks, who has the best butt? Monkey D. Luffy, Kurosaki Ichigo, or Uzumaki Naruto? And there is even a clarification saying you can't count the sexy jutsu either. So,
but we can count the QB forms.
I
have an answer for this. If this one is
it depends what you're looking for, guys. It depends. Like, look, if you want, that, like, if you want the one that's canonically an adult now, then you got to go with current Hokage Naruto.
I simply said, well, Luffy's butt is made of rubber, so I guess it's very, like, you could do.
It can be whatever you want.
I don't want to say it in that, like, I mean, like, you can make it into a car if you wanted. Like, it's just, like, it's got, like, a lot of applications to it. But the correct answer here actually is Frankie. He has a cannon in his ass. So, canonically, he has the best butt because it's got a gun.
Canonically.
Yeah, canonically.
Well, fine.
Yes, thank you, Lucas. Question here. Oh.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Okay. Question from Corito Prime. So I've been thinking a lot about school clubs and anime and getting kind of jealous of all these anime children and maybe real life children and all the fun they had at school. So with that in mind, I've come to ask 2 questions of you. If you grew up on a school that had all the extracurricular activities and clubs that anime schools have, A, which club do you think you would have joined as a child? And B, as an adult, which club do you think you wish you would have joined? Personally, I'm not sure, but I would have stuck to any club that probably would have tried the martial arts club, maybe kendo or archery clubs. And as for clubs I do wish I could have joined as an adult, any of the music clubs so I could learn to play an instrument or home economics. Basically all the clubs where you get a weapon.
If I grew up in Japan, I probably would have actually gone into a martial arts club because I actually did do Taekwondo when I was in elementary school. And I stopped doing it because, for one thing, I was just getting, bored of it. My heart wasn't in it anymore. But 2 was because I knew I was going into a very demanding magnet program when I was going into middle school. And so I was like, I don't know if I can keep this up anymore. Mm-hmm. If I were, growing up in Japan where there's more of an expectation to just, do after school stuff as like, it's kind of not looked down upon, but considered more unusual to not have a club of some kind at some point. That would have probably, played a role in me having to do it. And so then I would have probably stuck with the thing that I was already doing.
So I said that I might have ended up doing something very nerdy like an occult club. Because I was just naturally kind of like a recluse at that time. I was very like, this is a place I must go until I can go home and play more video games or, whatever. Like I was not like an outward child at a young age. But eventually I think I would have probably joined an athletic club. I also did Taekwondo, so that could have worked. But also I think I probably would have, if I had to have gotten into like a sport of some kind, it probably would have been swimming unless I went to Damon, in which case I would have joined the football club there.
Yeah, if you can meet, you can make it.
Yeah, I was gonna say, come on. I've seen some of the caliber of people who made they had basketball starters. I think still on their team for a while.
All the way into the Christmas Bowl, they still had them on their bench. Yes.
Yeah. So. And as for what I would have liked to have joined as an adult, I will say this is the same thing I say for my current life. I wish I had gotten into drama, like whatever drama club was available when I was a kid. It's one of my bigger regrets in life.
Some sort of like production thing for me because it would have, I think, taught me disciplines on stuff that, like, look, when I was making videos, I, had fun doing like the writing and stuff, and I kind of knew how to do that. But anytime it came to editing, I still, like, whenever I sit down and try and think of something, I still have no idea what I'm doing. I just, like, do it and hope that I figure it out. And then I look at people who actually, like, learn how to do stuff, and I'm like, oh, you can do things, and then I just never learned how to do it. So looking back, it would have been nice to have an actual, like, regimental experience of doing something like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, and go ahead.
No, I think that is the question. Thank you, Corito Prime. I like the answers. I would love to hear what other people's clubs that they would have joined are, because there are a lot of good ones in manga, Somebody's got to be like, I would have been Kendo Club. I'd have been doing Kendo every day,
I'm just thinking of the weirdnesses of Kendo and how I've never, like, understood certain parts of it. Like,
maybe you could get into Kendo now, Nick.
No. I don't like being hit.
It'd be better than everyone else. I don't know what to tell you. Nick, yeah, there's an easy solution built into the sport. Be good.
35-year-old man becomes the best at kendo. When asked for inspiration, well, my best friend told me that if I didn't want to get hit, I just had to be the best.
At high school kendo, you competed at
high school
along with the other like high schoolers.
Gotcha. Next question's from Squirrel Dude. Nick and Quinn, now that you're drawn to becoming professional Rakugoka, thanks to everyone's favorite series, Akane Banashi, what are your gimmicks or specialties in performing Rakugo going to be?
Okay, so
I love the phrasing of this.
Yes. Well, look, I was super critical of this when it happened and saying, well, this isn't impressive. This is nothing to me. So if I can't handle doing like multiple voices, like doing just weird voices in my thing, I'm done for. Like I have to be able to incorporate some level of that in there. But I do feel like my speciality would be like comedy stories that end on like very heavy emotional conclusions. That I feel like would very much fit my nen or zen, I think they call it in the series. It's just that what would you be skilled at? And I think that would be my wheelhouse. Something that gives you a good hit at the end, maybe makes you cry a little bit after making you laugh.
Might be something that I am self-conscious about sometimes when we podcast, which is my ability to just bulldoze ahead without realizing that maybe I should stop talking at a certain point. It's very good when you're on stage alone, though.
Yeah.
So I would just play into my strength. I would just keep on going. I would just keep on going and keep on talking until eventually I get an actual reaction. And then I'm like, oh, that's what I should do. And then I just keep doing that.
You wait until the crowd like demands a moment to give you applause. And you're like, now I shall stop for a second.
Yeah, it's throwing a bunch of shit and seeing what sticks approach of Rakugo, which sounds like a terrible approach, but put it that way.
Yes. So I think we'd be an interesting. Which one of us should open? Do you feel?
Me.
Okay.
Me.
You don't wait for me to have some story about fucking Jugamu, whatever, and then I'm dying, and then I'm like, next up, here's Nick with. I think he's going to tell you about the Seven Towers. Seven Towers is kind of a Rakugo story, right?
It's the seventh tower.
Seven Towers. I was pretty close.
What was really funny to me was when I read through those books with Nicole after we talked about them. And then I had to report to you like, yeah, she's complaining about all the same things you are. How there's only 6 books and stuff.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, Squirrel Dude, for the question.
Yes, thank you.
Got a question here from Brala. And by the way, we are in 2024 now.
Hey,
for a moment.
Less than a year ago. Yeah.
We are killing this now. Just barely, too.
Stop.
Just barely. Yeah, when we are done. Hello, dear Quinn, Rabbit Goddess of Wrath Larios, and dear Nick, everyone's favorite Florida man, Freeman.
And I've got stiff competition for that title, let me tell you.
I mean, you're pretty high on my list, and that's something, right?
I'm trying to think of any Florida men that I would consider good.
Oof. Ariana Grande kind of counts, right? Isn't she from Florida?
Florida man.
Okay, so women can't be bad, Nick? What are we saying? What am I being taken from now?
It's favorite Florida man.
What rights are being stripped away from me? Oh, well, China competed in the men's Royal Rumble, Nick. You know.
Well, what point is being made here? Hold on. No, don't you turn this around on me. No.
Sorry. It is me, your favorite lesbian, Ace, that German nerd who writes lesbian smut. I know, it's me, your favorite lesbian smut author from Germany, Brala. And yes, there's totally no reason why I'm highlighting this, but especially after how the last time the Google Doc messed up my name, so I thought my last questions came from somebody else. Ahem. Back on topic, I really have 2 questions for the 2 of you. Before Greens hit us all, we all didn't expect a golf manga, or much from a golf manga, and yet both the Discord and podcast at WMR really enjoyed it. So my question is, what topic or genre would you usually disregard or actively dislike wouldn't you mind giving a second chance to when it is done right for you?
Honestly, I do think that hang on. Hang on.
All right. All right.
You answered this while I
Yeah,
actually go
sure.
and find the example that I'm looking for. Go ahead.
So I will say that I have been getting more into movies a lot recently, and particularly I've been getting into more horror movies recently. I've been trying to break through a bit of that barrier I've had. So like I watched several of the big horror movies from the past year, and while I kind of pre-screen all of my movies, like I have to kind of look up a couple things ahead of time or like watch the trailer to make sure I'm like, no, this is too scary. I have enjoyed things like The Substance this year, which is like a lot of body horror, which is not my thing at all. But I really enjoyed it. I was like, I feel like if the movie just is able to help me kind of understand it, or if it just connects to an experience I like relate to or I find interesting, then I think I maybe find my in. But that's always, that's a specialty difficulty thing that you don't always know until you watch it too. So, don't expect this to be the turn of like, all right, Quinn just Saw 9, everybody. She's going to give her thoughts. Like, nah, it's too scary for me.
I was looking for Hakutaku in order to make my example here, because I do think that, like, one of those weird creation-centered stories could be done very well. We've seen them, we've seen it happen with Akane Banashi, but we've also seen that a lot of times when people try and say like, oh, here's like, my kind of passionate thing that is in a way also about the artistic expression, that it just doesn't always work out well. It didn't really work out with Tenmaku Cinema, for example. And I do think that something that is, along the niche of like a series about, like someone who makes video games or is very into gaming as their method of expression could be good, even though like the technicalities and stuff of it is like, it doesn't really interest me. And but it, like I didn't know anything about, Rakugo, other than what I had seen from other anime and manga and stuff before I started reading Akane Banashi, and it's one of my favorite series that's running right now. You can do stuff like that as long as it's done in a way that, your audience can find more approachable, and it's tricky to do that with a lot of topics. But it can be done, and if you can do it, it makes for among the more unique reading experiences that you can have.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I also noted here that as far as manga goes, I would be curious to find something historical that I could really get into as somebody who does not know Japanese history at all. It would need like the right in, but I don't know Japanese history at all. I know there's like a dude called Oda in there, like a Nobunaga Oda or something like that.
Oda Nobunaga, yeah.
I don't know what he did. I don't know if he was a good guy or a bad guy.
Depends on your perspective.
I don't know anything. I believe I know him more as like a girl in a video game at some point.
He shows up in the Onimusha series. He shows up in the first one, and it's really weird because he's like made a pact with demons and stuff, and you just never fight him. Like,
all right. Just he got away with that. Also, sorry, second question. You're halfway done now. Congrats. I am playing In Stars in Time right now, an adventure RPG which came out last month. Which, yeah, to this question, just came out as well. And I've been loving it. Actually, I'm loving it so much, I wish to annoy everyone about it just to share this game with others. Do you have this feeling yourself about something at one point that you found yourself enjoying so much that you want to talk to people about, even if you've ended up talking someone's ear off? Yes, I too am neurodivergent and enjoy to share the hyperfixations that I have. And I have one very particular recently that I've wanted to talk to someone about, but I can't. And that is, I've been super into like X-Men comics and movies. Like those are like the two things I'm kind of doing. So I found excuses to like talk to people about X-Men as much as I can. But anytime like I read a really, really good Colossus moment, I want to talk to someone about it. I don't know anybody who likes Colossus as much as I do. There's no one to like really share this joy. Like I sobbed reading a scene recently where Pietro and Ileana got to have like an emotional brother sister moment, and I was like, no one's gonna appreciate this as much as I am. I'm the only fucking Colossus fangirl I know.
I mean, I think that the entire existence of a lot of the bonus episodes that we have on the Patreon are because of this. Of like, I gotta talk to someone about this thing. Like,
Yeah, I just need to tell somebody about this.
So I need to hold my friend hostage because we're doing a recording and they have to listen to me talk about it for an hour or two.
Yeah. I don't need to keep tying myself to the chair, though. That's unnecessary. You're like, no, you're just kind of like emotionally hostage. You don't you don't need to film a video. Also, neither of your parents can respond to this. Who are you going to get money from?
Okay. Yeah, I think that's the questions.
I believe so. Yes, those are the questions from Brala. There is also a note that Ice Shield 21 is getting published in Germany right now, so if somebody is trying to learn German, it would be a great way to do it, but it's worth noting that's like, again, a year ago now, so who knows if they're still on sale. I don't know anything about it, but that is an option, Nick. You could learn the Deutsch.
Do you think that some like Viz Germany executive was like, oh, Germany gets an appearance 300 chapters into the series.
Yeah, they love the Germans in the manga. He also runs a 4 tours. That's very good. That's a very high number.
Oh, what do you mean he's only in 1 chapter? This is bullshit.
I have based everything off of these 3 chapters that show us how talented this German linebacker is. So I presume the whole series is splattering to the German people.
Makes one of those like YouTube character dedication videos that's just got every panel of the German football star.
They're just doing supercuts of him. They're just like editing him to like a bunch of cool music.
That's okay.
Yeah, good to know. Good to know.
Thank you, Brala. Next, back from Kaniku-fan, Nick and Quinn. And Quinn, my favorite manga host. How are you? Been watching more shows lately, some of which have been live-action adaptations, which brings me to my question. What manga from the recap do you think would make for good live-action adaptation? Who would you cast as the star role to draw in the normie crowd?
Okay, I have an answer for this one. I'm going to go Kaiju number 8. Because I think that's in a realm. It could easily work in crowd please.
They can make that jump, yeah.
I need a lead. I am casting Aaron Taylor Johnson because I think every single person who went to go see Craven exclusively saw it to see his abs. He's cut. So if he just looks like that a couple times in that series, people will go see it. Like, look, a lot of women watch The Witcher, and it's not because they love the lore.
I do worry that he might look a little too young to play Kafka, but you could have him play someone else.
He's older than Kafka.
He doesn't look like it, though.
I know, but that's what they want. Is they still want it. You know, they could zhuzh him up, and by zhuzh I mean dress him down, make him schlubbier for a little bit, and then they'll turn kaiju, and they'll paint fucking graphics onto the 6-pack abs, and it'll be great.
I imagine that Spy Family would probably make the jump to live action quite easily. I fully expect that, within several years' time, we'll probably see like a Japanese production live action adaptation of it. If we're talking like Hollywood adaptation, that'd be tricky because you would want to have actors that you would need to have a good Anya, which would be very difficult because you need to have someone who can be cute and funny, who's also like believably looks like they could be 6, or a 4-year-old who is mistaken for being 6. But the other trick is that the other people that would be in it would have to be cool and funny and lovable, but also you would want the people playing Lloyd and Yor, you would want people to want them to have sex.
Okay, yeah, that is a factor. They are two characters that you instinctually want to see hook up, even if that's not normally your jam. You're like, I just want these two too.
So that's very difficult
Mm-hmm.
because I don't know, like, I don't do these casting things in general, but those are the qualifications that I have there. They're like, these are the important things. If I'm like, the if I'm the advisor representing like what makes the core of a series important for those Hollywood executive meetings, for the people who make the decisions, that's my advice that I would give.
Okay. Okay. All right. Uh, we've got two questions here. Thank you, Kanika fan. We got two
Hmm.
questions here from Jake Hogginsa. Jake Hogginsa. The first one is, what are your favorite "fuck you, I ain't losing here" moments in manga? And I have two. The first would be, I always like Luffy getting up to fight Lucci at the end of Enies Lobby, where Luffy's like done. He's been beaten, and then Usopp like calls out to him, and Lucci like turns his attention to it, and that's like enough for Luffy to be like, all right, well, I'm getting up one more time and knocking you out because I'm not letting you fuck with my friends.
Hmm.
But the one I think that really always stands out in my mind is Jumanji's "One More Step" moment from Ice Shield
Hmm.
21, when he's just like, he gets tackled, and he's just like, holy shit, is this what you guys have been like facing this entire time? Like, if you've been facing this and still going, then I can at least do one more step. It's just like a very cool, like, hell yeah, like, put that extra effort in moment.
Not exactly losing, but one that stands out to me is the introductory story for Akane in Alice in Borderland, where she's crawling through the wreckage of the ruined stadium after, the hot spring has boiled up under it. She's grievously wounded and she thinks she's going to die. So she takes out her phone to like record like a video will. And then uh, a few seconds in, she switches to instead recording a video message to herself in the future, telling herself, "Hey, to me in the future, you better be fucking grateful for what I've done for you, so that you could be there." And then she just
Yeah,
keeps on going, and she survives. Love her character so
that's a great
much.
moment. Great moment. And the second question that is asked here is, if Luffy were to rank the Straw Hats, including himself, from best to worst, what order do you think he would put them in? And I do believe, like, quite honestly, I think the charm of Luffy is that he doesn't view his crewmates as more or less essential to each other. Like, I think he knows that, like, a character like Nami is weak in a fight, but he also understands how invaluable she is as a crew member. So even if he might call one of his like teammates weak or something like that, I think it's very clear that he like deeply respects what they do and who they are. So I don't think he could rank them.
I think that Luffy is the type of person who, at the end of the day, when he is, at his best, he would be just like that. But also, he has the mind of a child, and so he has various whims that beset him and would be very willing to rank one ahead of the others if they've done something to,
Yes.
please him. So, for example, if Sanji has just made food, Sanji's the best. If Nami has, just found the way to the next island, Nami's the best. Someone who does him the most recent favor is his favorite at any given time.
Sure, I could see a very childish thing like that where he's just like, "Oh yeah, Frankie patched a hole in the boat. That's the coolest thing anyone's done for me recently."
Not even necessarily that. Frankie did a cool robot thing that I
Yeah,
like.
yeah,
so,
could be that too.
so it would depend on any given moment, but at his most serious, you're correct.
Yeah.
This next one comes from Ota. Dear Nicholas Freeman and Quinn the Imprisoned.
Oh
Wahoo, question time,
no!
wahoo. Apparently you are being held hostage, yes.
Well,
One,
fair.
if you had the ability to summon 3 clones and do the Naruto thing where they can all do shit and then you gain their experiences when you combine back together, what would you task each clone with doing, and what would you do with new free time you have?
So I said that I'm going to split my 3 clones like this. I'm going to have one that is entirely just devoted to cleaning and doing yard work. Like just get those things under control, get them handled, like really like put your full attention on this. One of them is just going to be focused on learning a new language. That's just going to be her whole deal. She's just focused on that. And then the last one is going to spend all their time cooking and baking. Like, even if it's not an amount of food we can eat, we'll like give it to people. But like just learning those skills that like is like time consuming to like gather. And then I'm going to use that free time to go through all of my Letterboxd watch list because it's too many movies on there and it gives me anxiety thinking about it.
God, this is tricky because I keep on thinking back to the way that clones work versus how I would use clones in general.
Okay.
So, because I feel like I would want to do like something that would like keep me focused, but that's not how shadow clones work.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because I feel like my greatest enemy in terms of doing anything is self-motivation and focus. So like I have all these ideas of like, oh, I want to like, write a thing. And it's like, well, you don't write faster with multiple people working on something unless it's in specifically a way where you can like brainstorm. And that's not how that would work because of the way that shadow clones work. They're just, another you. You wouldn't be bouncing ideas off of someone. You would just be talking to yourself, essentially. So that's tricky for me, is because like the big things that I want to do, I don't think would be helped by having multiple me's running around.
Interesting. All right.
It just kind of makes me more aware of what I need to do, though. So thanks.
I love that you're like thanking them for the hypothetical of if we gave you 3 magical clone ninjas of yourself, what would you use them for? And you're like, thanks for thinking about me.
Yeah.
All right.
You gave me something to think about, basically.
Is this still me? No, you're reading.
Oh, I'm reading. Number 2, your favorite discontinued product, like the one that really hurts. For example, they had these wildly potent peppermints at Starbucks that came in a small tin container, and those are just gone now. Those things got me through college with that wake-up rush of freshness.
Aw. On the similar vein of Starbucks, I used to get the chai eggnog latte from there, which was so good. And they've stopped carrying eggnog at Starbucks now, so you just can't even. You'd have to make it at home, which just isn't the same.
There was a really big thing that really annoyed me. So I have had an FM transmitter for about 15 years.
Okay.
Which is just, you plug it in to, your car charger port, the cigarette lighter port thing, and you set it to a frequency, and there's an SD card slot in it, and it just broadcasts from the SD card, and you just set your radio to it. Bam, done. Because of the way that cars have modernized to include, Bluetooth and all that stuff, that kind of technology is kind of outdated.
Yeah.
And so when mine broke, because I would have to pull it out of the charger, and so the constant motion of doing that over the course of years and years and years caused the plastic to wear down and for it to just eventually break. When that happened, I couldn't get one like it anymore because they're outdated now. So I was finding all these things that are just like Bluecast thing, or like pair it with your phone. I'm like, no, I don't want to use my phone as my music device. Stop it. Just let me have an SD card that has my music on it that I can, the way that I've had it. Just do the thing that I've always been able to do before.
It is shameful how much I'm realizing, like, God, we are getting older. We are becoming like the generation that we were like afraid we were going to be, which is like, why are things changing so much? They used to be so simple back in the days.
I just want to be able to have a device separate from my phone that is just for music.
Yes.
Come on.
My older brother agreed with you. To the day he died, he owned an iPod Nano just for music playing.
Good for you, Mikey. You're right.
Yeah, it worked for him, I guess bring it back to food real quick. I also really miss shark bites. They were just like gummy shark snacks. But they were around a lot in the 90s, and I just like remembered them recently. I was like, damn, I don't know why. Those fruit snacks in particular feel like they would hit really hard right now. I think they might have come back at some point recently, but I'm not really in the market to like hunt down snack food so much. So unless I see it on like store shelves, I'm not going to pick it up.
I am looking at a list of like stuff that is like discontinued, and I do see that like Trix yogurt's discontinued, and yeah, I kind of liked that stuff. Caramel apple empanada at Taco Bell, loved those things, and then they came back recently. And I was like, this isn't as good as I remember it. So
they must have messed it up. No, they messed
it's
it up.
Possible, probably not, but possible.
Possible. All right, and then the third question.
Yes, hang on. I've lost my... There it is. What's a hated twist you would probably love if it was written by any other person? For example, Ziggy's name being Shiki because a robot said it weird being cool if there wasn't a whole context of dumb manga to go behind it.
In a similar way, if Samurai 8 were a more self-aware and silly series, the twist that Daruma and Ancient Space Samurai set up a video game and made it the most popular video game in the world to like train Hachimaru would have been like a fun, silly, dumb twist as opposed to something that kind of took itself seriously, was like, no, guys, isn't this cool? And it's like, not really. How did he do this, guys? Why? Why did he do this?
I mean, they did do that in a movie like 20 years before.
I was gonna say,
so,
last Starfighter is pretty much that same idea.
I gotta find that and watch it again. It's been so long since I've seen that. Also, I can imagine that if we had liked Samurai 8, the moment of the 8 turning into an infinity symbol, we would have fucking loved.
God, I've lost my. I'd be like, Nick, it was there all along.
I'm sure that there are like there must be countless examples in Samurai 8 alone, because there were a bunch of stupid twists in that too.
Yeah. All right, great questions from Ota. We have a couple questions here from Drew. Says, dear nice person at the top left corner of the YouTube window, and dear other nice person at the bottom right corner. Aw. Yeah, after yet another crazy WMR party where you wake up to find yourselves face to face with the devil.
Party?
Apparently. And also we pissed off the devil. We regularly invite the devil to it, I guess, as well, which is an interesting choice on our part. You're like, sorry.
Nah, that sounds like something I would do.
Okay. We really pissed him off, though, during the party. And being sporting, he makes a deal with us that if we don't want to spend the rest of eternity in our own personal hell, we must perform the entire next episode in character as one of our original WMR characters. But we must provide the costume. Also, because I explained the Spookmaster General as a spirit that possesses me, the Spookmaster is ineligible to choose because I believe it is technically still me. To that notion, number one, what did we do to piss off the devil? And I know what I did to piss off the devil. Because it's what I end up finding out is what pisses a lot of people off about me, is I just keep apologizing to them. Like, I didn't do anything wrong to the devil, but I have created some slight that I did. I was like, I gave you like kind of a warm drink. I should have given you a cold drink. Like, you're in hell. It's also, and I just keep apologizing for it to the point he's like, you're actually annoying me now. Shut the fuck up.
I probably made the devil think that I am full of myself and arrogant.
Okay.
I know for a fact that some people have gotten that impression of me, and knowing how I typically kind of carry myself in my undeserved confidence moments, I think that I understand why. So yeah.
Yeah. Very fair. Question 2. What would be waiting for you in your own personal hell? So I try not to go too dark because unfortunately I have anxiety. So I imagine my own personal health quite frequently. But I said, so I'm trapped in a room where I'm just continuously being given shots over and over again. Like as soon as one shot's done, like a new shot starts beginning. Like I'm just in that anxiety state. And while that's happening, the only thing that's playing is a true crime podcast where they just talk about really like grisly murders. But every so often, they stop to have movie opinions that I just vehemently disagree with. Like every so often, like enough child decapitation. Do you guys feel like her from 2015 was kind of overrated? Like Spike Jonze is kind of like a little overdone, don't you think? And then it goes right back to like, and then the head was found in the toilet. And I'm just like, this sucks. I hate this.
Oh, let me see. I'll try and keep it light too. So the whole thing happens while I'm also listening to things that I can't contradict. So, for example, um, 2007 era shippers get transported to my time in order to talk to me about how Zutara is the one true ship of Avatar: The Last Airbender. And actually, if you like look at things for it, there's all sorts of symbolism, and there are little hints that actually Zuko and Katara secretly love each other. And obviously, Aang being 2 years younger than Katara means that they can't be together, but Zuko being 2 years older than Katara means that, of course, they're the perfect age.
Yeah.
Perfect age for each other. It all makes perfect sense. And I can't contradict any of them. And also, they get mad at me for not, supporting their ship, and so on. There are people who are just constantly having disagreements in front of me over what the new Shonen Jump Big Three is, and I can't say anything. And all of this is happening while the temperature is just slightly too warm, and I can't turn the AC on.
Ooh,
just
okay.
a little bit too warm, so like it's not like, oh man, this is unfathomably hot, so I'll just like sit here, but it's like, oh man, it's like 76 degrees. If I could just turn it on a little bit, I wouldn't even need to like set even like below 75. I just need the cool air running through the room, and it's stagnant in here, and I can't do that.
Do you ever realize at some point that you're like, if I ever make a mortal enemy, they have like definitive evidence of what to do to really get to me from this podcast when we answer some of these questions? Like, what are the best ways to really get under your skin? Like,
what's your social security number?
What would really torture you? What would really be agonizing to have to go through?
And also, what's your mother's maiden name?
Yeah. What street did you grow up on? Question 3. What character will you spend an entire episode reviewing manga as, and can we get a snippet? I went with an easy answer here. I went with Hambone Jackson. I'm just going to get a big beard. I'm just going to be like, there's gold in them there, manga Nick. Bang, bang. He has guns. Like, I'm going to get real guns, just shoot them into my ceiling. Because I got to entertain myself throughout this episode so I don't break character.
It disturbs me how easily I can actually do Gakuro's voice. Like, it's because it seems like something that should like wear on me. It doesn't seem to, because of course, there are those voices that like, it's like, oh, I kind of push myself outside of my range to do them. And so it wears on you eventually. Doing Gakuro's voice doesn't wear me out any more than just naturally doing the podcast does. It's very weird.
It's basically a second voice for you.
He's up here and I shouldn't be able to do that. It's like, no, it's fine. I can do it. It's okay.
Yeah. Bravo to you. Nick will do it as Gakuro then. So we'll do an episode as Hambone Jackson and Gakuro.
No subscribers anymore.
Thank you, Drew. Great questions. We're gonna get another good one here from Jake Hogginsa. What axed manga do you think did the best job at telling a complete story? I will say that, recently speaking, I think Tenmaku Cinema reads pretty decently as a short story. It's not great. You would have liked to have seen more of the actual movie they made, but as something where they made a short movie once, this like magical moment in high school, and it then goes on to them being like very good in their fields. Like, yeah, it's just like a good little short story about this cute romance and friendship that blooms over movies.
Yeah. I guess it also depends on what your definition of axed is in terms of how long the breadth of it is. Because there are definitely some that kind of like go on for about, like 40 chapters, and you get the impression of like, that was okay, that lasted.
I mean, like, Magu-chan counts, so...
Yeah, it did get canceled.
Yeah,
it went on for a significant period of time, and I would say that did, run a very, very good course. I don't know if I'm going to come up with anything better than your example though, because a lot of the stuff that we've covered, you can tell like when it's gearing up
Yeah.
to stop. So I don't think I'm going to come up with any better example than Tenmaku Cinema.
All right. Well, thank you, Jay Coginsa. Good question.
All right. Next, we're gonna take some questions from Raftalex, or is it Raftelx or Raftalex?
I assume Raftalex because I assume it's a reference to when we all thought Laugh's Tale was called Raftel.
Fair enough.
That was an island.
Dear Nick, I'm gonna make more videos, but I haven't posted anything in nearly 4 years. And Quinn, my YouTube is unfindable, but if you look it up, you can find a video of a drunk phone call to a random person I didn't know who wanted to beat me up.
Wait, what?
Is that true?
Wait, if you search for me on YouTube, there's a phone call of someone threatening to beat me up?
I don't.
I feel like I need to look this up.
With it being nearly 13 years at the time of this writing, it's now been over 13 years, since you started the podcast, I think it would be a good idea to rank a top 10 list of recommendations or series in the recap that you find to be the best, or a top 5 best, top 5 worst. Also, I think you should maybe think about going back and finishing series you may have recapped a decade ago that have finished, or ones you really didn't read much of. The World God Only Knows comes to mind specifically as an example.
So
I don't know if this is a question, but
I did put together some of these lists. I just put a couple of these quick ones together, and I will say here are my top 5 best recap series. Now, this is not to say these are objectively the best series we've ever done recaps for. It is mostly a combination of what series I've enjoyed and which ones were really fun to do on the podcast. So I said number 5 is a tie between We Never Learn and Food Wars, which both produced really, really fun chapters. Number 4 is Magu-chan God Destruction, which like became almost an entire community thing. I have a little guy up here, my son from all time, as some of the fun of that series. Number 3 is Gakyo Hote. Just so much fun to recap those series, or that series and those chapters. Number 2 is World Trigger, which is like just as a special thing for this podcast. And then number 1 was One Piece. It's just it's the series I enjoy talking about the most, and it's been with this podcast literally from the beginning, so I have a lot of fondness for it.
Not that long ago, we did do a thing that was kind of like our best and worst of all time recommendations. It might have been for like the 10-year, and it was not that long ago that we did it, because I remember that we shared our worst series. Certainly.
Sure.
I think I shocked you with the fact that my worst was not Kodomo no Jigan, or
well,
tennis.
I don't consider that one even allowed. I'm just like, no, that one doesn't exist, Nick. You mentioned a fake episode. It's like trying to admit the Porygon episode of Pokemon exists, where you're like, no, they just didn't air it. It didn't exist. They realized they had made a mistake and they stopped. I have top 5 worst recap series, series that we hate talking about. Number 5, New Sexorcist, classic, current series. Number 4 was Eden Zero, 3 Fairy Tail, 2 Samurai 8, and I think the worst series, like truly believe this, that we talk about, or I've ever talked about on the show, is Boruto 2 Blue Vortex. I can't think of a series we recap week to week I've hated more.
There has not been a good chapter of Boruto since that time skip happened at all.
Yeah.
And it's really just a matter of like which is the least bad. So
yeah.
Yeah.
And I have 5. I don't consider these my best recommendations, but I just have 5 favorite recommendations we've taken on this show. And that is Miruku-chan, I really love. Silver Spoon was just awesome to see, like just a completely different style of manga. Komi Can't Communicate, extraordinarily cute. Wouldn't have known it. Glad people brought up. Destroy All Humanity, They Can't Be Regenerated is another great one. But I think one of my favorite recommendations ever is Alice in Borderland, and it's mostly because we had a really good discussion between the two. I don't know what it was. I don't know if we both accidentally took the same thing or something beforehand, but it was just like a very great conversation that I am just happy we had.
It'd be very tricky because I don't do anything.
I didn't either back then, which is what's so wild. It was just a very good moment. So Yeah, those are a couple best and worst and stuff like that. But yeah, we are coming very close. Next year will be 15 years of weekly manga recap, which is wild to say.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think this is a question that we have next.
Uh, Yeah, hold on. No, there is
I
a
don't think
question.
this is a question.
There is a
Is there?
question in there. The question is,
Oh, okay.
so hello, Quinn and Nick. I'll be frank, I'm running out of patience with World Trigger, and by the time you get to this question, I might have fully dropped my favorite Shonen Jump manga of all time. So my question is, putting Ashihara aside for a second, who's a manga artist, dead or alive, that you wish had a really long life while they're working on manga? Also, I just made myself really sad because we are currently on Away Mission 240, or Chapter 241, Away Mission Test Part 37. But if the series had stayed at a weekly pace, it would have been on probably Chapter 550, the Away Mission Pre-Test, Pre-Departure, Post-Test, Pre-Departure Medical Exam Part 64. I will say, so the answer I put with this was like, yeah, Ashihara, Togashi, and Miura, I think, are probably like the most notable examples, maybe to a lesser degree, Toriyama. But I want all mangaka to have long, healthy lives. So I am firmly, loudly, and still will always be in favor of, if that means chapters take longer to come out or they cost me as a consumer more to procure, I am fine with that. I want these mangaka to be healthy and live full lives the same that I do.
Yeah. The answer is any that have had health problems that have derailed their careers in some form. Just all of them. Except the ones that are shitty people, but, that's just, like, not wishing well on bad people, not, their manga output, so. Next comes from Screwing On. Dear Nick and Quinn, got a few questions for you for old time's sake.
All right.
Number one, back when you two were originally reading Chainsaw Man, one of the biggest reasons why you initially dropped it was the belief that Denji was nothing but a massive, unlikable pervert. Which now, looking back on part one, although he's definitely sex motivated, he's not as perverted as you guys gave him credit for compared to other actual pervs like Sanji and Mineta. He never peeps on women, never tries to look up girls' skirts. The only pair of boobs he ever touched are when Power and Makima gave him permission to, and his obsession with sex in general comes less from a place of naked women are sexy, her, and more of a fact that his touch-starved goblin boy never experienced any real affection in his life since his mom died when he was too young to remember her, and the only positive outlet he had was from cheap porn and chilling with his cute chainsaw dog. So with that in mind, do you think it's safe to say that Denji is not actually a pervert, and maybe the original take on him was a bit too harsh? No, he is a pervert. You're just describing the pervert comic relief characters and comparing the protagonist to them, which is not a fair comparison to make for a manga as a whole.
Well, I will say one thing to the idea that perhaps we treated Denji too harshly. I will agree that I think we probably did. It is something I am trying to work on as somebody who consumes media, is to not be reactionary as much to things I initially dislike, because sometimes that is the intention, and etc. I do want to be clear. Denji is a pervert. He is motivated by sex. He's also very simple, and like in his animal brain kind of mentality, he's maybe not as like creepy or I don't know what you want to say, but like characters like Mineta and stuff like that maybe like sometimes do or kind of like insinuate actions that are very uncomfortable, and I don't know if Denji did a ton of those. Some of them were kind of thrust upon him, but he is a pervert. I need to be very clear. That is like a defining characteristic of Denji.
When he is in, the throes of going to die if something bad happens, his motivation to keep him going is, I want to have sex. Like that's a pervert.
And that's a fine thing. That is a fine motivation to get you forward in life if you need it, but let's call a spade, guys.
Right. Now, in terms of like, did the series turn out to be better, and did Denji turn out to be better than initially giving him credit for? Yes, I'm with you that it did. And part of that is that, look, that was definitely my first exposure to Fujimoto's writing style. I've gotten a lot more used to his weirdnesses and willingness to just like have characters be weirdos like that. But I think that it is a false comparison to say like, well, he's not as bad as Mineta. It's like, well, but Mineta's not he's not he's not the protagonist. He's like the 12th most important character in the class that he's in. So anyhow, number 2, in a similar vein, Nick appears to be absolutely cursed to drop or not care for series that inevitably become extremely popular later, like Jujutsu Kaisen, Sakamoto Days, Demon Slayer, etc. I don't think Demon Slayer was my fault. I think that it was you
can blame it on me. Go ahead.
It was a long time ago at this point, but I don't remember being the one who was like, "No, we're not going to do Demon Slayer." Definitely did not like Sakamoto Days and Jujutsu Kaisen at first. I'll take those. And both of you tend to not like some other well-loved series like Hunter x Hunter. But you like Hunter x Hunter a lot.
I don't want to say a lot. I kind of like Hunter x Hunter. I enjoy parts of it.
Okay. And Mob Psycho. So what is one series that either of you love that the general manga anime crowd doesn't care about all that much, and to make things harder, no, you can't just say Show 21.
I mean, like, look, we have hundreds of these examples, like, or I should say hundreds, but like dozens. Like, yeah, Tenmaku Cinema, Green Greens, Neolation, Cypher Academy. Like, there's a bunch of series that it's cross-managed, like series that are like, yeah, we love this, but clearly we weren't in the majority. You know, obviously some people in our audience liked it, but you know,
Barrage.
Yeah. Also, my personal hell is usually that less that like I like series that aren't popular. It is that I like the unpopular characters in those series, and thus am always cursed to never really get my hype. Like, I'm the person who like, oh, I love this series, Bleach. I'm going to emotionally attach myself to Chad, and I can't wait to see the series through his eyes. And that just always screws me up.
And then lastly, on a similar tangent from Hunter x Hunter, for all the critiques you guys had on the York New arc, I am shocked to learn neither of you had any opinion on the Phantom Troop, since they are arguably what you two wanted the League of Villains to be, basically being a group of organized criminals and murderers, who also just happen to be very caring and devoted friend group who do anything for each other. Which makes it very peculiar since they weren't mentioned once during the top 5 best villain groups in manga. I have to ask, did you guys simply forget they existed, or did you legitimately not care? What happens in Hunter x Hunter? I don't remember anything from Hunter x Hunter, okay?
It's so funny to me because I sat there when I saw this question. I was writing my answer down, and I was like, I can't name a single member of this group besides Hisoka. I can't name anybody.
Isn't it?
I knew his. I remembered Hisoka joins it, and looking at the group afterwards, because I looked it up online, I was like, I think I remember Crollo. I don't remember if they do something with him or not, but I know that design. But it was like something. I was like looking at this group. I was like, I don't know any of these people. I don't know who any of them are. It's just, for whatever reason, that group did not leave an impression on me.
I think that I went into enough detail in explaining that for as much as I respect Togashi and hope that he is able to do what he wants in his, remaining creative tenure, he does not jive with my manga tastes.
Sure.
And so I can tell you this very honestly, for the amount of Hunter x Hunter that I read a long time ago, almost all of that information is 100% gone from my brain. I remember who Gon is because he's the protagonist. I remember who Hisoka is because he's a memorable villain character. And I remember who Killua is because he's also there. And I don't know if I can tell you a single other character's fucking name. There are conversations that come up when people talk about their favorite manga moments and they talk about other stuff. And I'm like, I'm sure you liked it. And I have I've got nothing that makes me want to check it out again. I gave it a try. And I'm very confident that if I gave it another try, I still wouldn't like it. So I just don't. And I just kind of leave it be. So you say the Phantom Troop, and I hear that come up in like lists of best villain groups. So I'm like, I'm sure you liked it. And I don't even remember I don't remember anything about reading that part of the series. I don't.
The only thing I remember is we were both really annoyed at the auction that took place, because they describe an auction for a really long time, and then they eventually are like, actually we don't need the auction, and it never comes up, and you're like, wait, why did we spend like
why did you do this?
Why did you spend like 2 chapters learning about it then? Yeah, it is that, but thank you for the questions. And we have a couple here from Molderman. He
Hmm.
says, Hallo Nick and Quinn, zoals Winter Nederlands Vogel. You just try it, you know? I was about as likely to say it if I had taken my time. So, question. Say you create a sister magazine for Shonen Jump that will give a second chance to 10 previously canceled series. What series would you pick? So I put down 10.
Yeah, Gakuhote, Cypher Academy. Oh gosh, I forget what it's called. Um, the one with the freaking extending pole. God damn it,
Oh, Last Sayuki.
Last Sayuki. For all the wrong reasons. Time Paradox Ghostwriter.
Okay.
I gotta have that. I think that that's gonna fill my joke one, so I'm not gonna put I Tell C, but that was getting really fun towards the end, and how bad it was too, and how stupid it was. Let's see. Does Mago-chan count as a cancel series? I feel like they lasted long enough that I wouldn't really call it fully like that, so I'm not
Sure.
really gonna say that. Ginka and Luna, because I did really like that series, at least at first. Um, da, 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 da. Green Greens, of course. Too nice to see if it ever actually like went anywhere. Because like so once we got to a point where it was like, oh, there's an antagonist in this, it was actually like getting interesting. And then, but by that point, it's like, no, the fate of this series is written on the wall. It's done. And to go back further, cross manage.
Okay.
I know that's not a full 10, but that's stuff that I can name off the top of my head. That's legit, genuine answers.
So I went into this. I wanted to specifically avoid people that have like moved on to doing something else at this point. So like I didn't like
Hmm.
bring back Neolation because that artist is working on Marriage Toxin right now and stuff
Right.
like that. So I tried to go with people who like I haven't seen anywhere since this. So or whatever they've done since this isn't going. So double arts I put in there. Nisakoi's been done. I was like, I feel like we could continue double arts a little bit. I put ITLC in there because I was like, I want some kind of funny, weird kind of series in this magazine. This is mine. This is a fantasy world we're playing in. So there's gonna be multiple sports manga in here. So I have Greens in there. Tenmaku Cinema. I was like, look, I control this magazine. Not everything's going to
Fine.
be
Yeah.
great. So I brought Samurai 8 in there. I was like, let's just see what happens. Let's just see what happens if he gets to do everything he wants to do.
And Quinn, that would save Boruto because Kishimoto wouldn't be
Yes,
writing it anymore.
it would just theoretically have to end, correct? And this can't be worse.
Oh, that would be the monkey paw, I guess, right there. It's like, oh, if we do this, then Kishimoto won't be writing Boruto again, and then Boruto can be good. Is it Boruto just ends instead? Oh, but Sarada.
I'm actually okay with that if that's how it goes. I put Lock On in there. I was like, we need like kind of like a cheesy romance pervy series in there. Let's give that a shot. Cross Manage.
Man, that takes me back.
Yeah, here's another one. It's gonna take you back. A Gay Has Tennis.
Oh wow, I have not thought about that in a long time.
Yeah, I was just trying to go back to ones that I was like, I remember this being good, and I'd like to see this get more of a shot. Last Sayuki, and then I was like, I want a comedy series, so Mitama Security, or Security, Spirit Busters, which I eventually read, and I was like, this got pretty good actually.
Man, you might as well put Smokey BB in there.
Yeah, like Ole Galazo is gonna go in
Yeah.
my series, guys.
We need to like that should be like our thing of like spot the fake manga, like because we both know so many early canceled Shonen Jump sports manga specifically.
There's
Oh,
so many, unfortunately.
that's a good one. All right. Next, thank you, Mulderman, for that.
Yes.
Next from Screwing On Again. Dear Nick and Quinn, at time of writing, the 1,000-Year Blood War anime is still going on, and it is right now. And the most recent episode just dropped of Uryu and Ichigo actually having the climactic clash that the manga never had. I have heard that a lot of stuff in the anime has had stuff added to it. The more I watch the anime from the side, the more convinced I am that Kubo is serious about wanting to fix the issues his final arc had in the manga. Sure, not every problem has been amended, like the pointlessness of the Bankai thefts at the start. Gremmy's imagination ability being way less impressive than he initially advertised. Well, I don't know then.
I mean, did you see he turned Yachiro's arm into a cookie? So that's pretty crazy when you think about it.
Mayuri's still having an answer for absolutely everything because science. BG9. Oh my god, I forgot that was a thing. There was just a random robot called BG9. And Robert
Was it a robot or was it a person?
It was like a cyborg guy.
I truly like there's again like I have ejected a lot of the unnecessary details from Bleach from my mind over the years.
BG9 and Robert's Schrifts never being revealed. Chad being Chad. Yeah. And of course the painfully unfunny reveal regarding Giselle's true gender. That was one that I was hoping would get changed. Because But it also did fix some huge problems I've had with the arc for years, such as a better understanding of what happened to the Quincy's of the past, the Royal Guards having an actual fight against Yuho Box boys, Ichigo getting more character stuff, more development on certain fights that were skipped, or Yume's fan service jokes getting removed. I did hear about that. Yubak having some actual characterization and motivation, so he feels like a real character. What are you talking about there, boy? I say I've always been a real character. What is all this nonsense y'all talking about?
I've always had these nuanced layers, you know? Like an onion, you keep peeling me back, you keep finding something new.
That's right. And by the way, I've been alive for 999 years. Shrek stole that from me.
I came up with the onion bit.
Uryu having a real arc. This could all still fizzle by the end, but I'm actually having fun with what's being shown right now, which leads me to a couple of questions. One, if this true version of the 1,000-Year Blood War was what we actually read all those years ago, would you have been more optimistic on how Bleach ended compared to how it actually was? And two, when it comes to recommending media, how valid is it to recommend a remake, revision, or retelling of a story that the author themselves wanted to change compared to the original media you experienced, even if the original was bad? So, okay. Possibly for the answer to number one. I have definitely heard of some of the changes, and I do feel as though a lot of the big issues with the 1,000-Year Blood War arc were probably because of the fact that Kubo was horrendously burnt out on doing a full-time manga for 15 years and just wanted to get across the finish line to a degree. I think that certain storytelling decisions like the ones that you laid out there, not going to be changed by that, but a lot of the biggest issues I had were just like, and then the fight just ends, and who gives a shit about this? Who gives a shit about this reveal and that reveal? So probably to an extent.
I would say, I think this is why I made the mental note to bring up the Zack Snyder movies, because it's a very similar thing of like, yo, if you watch the full version, it fixes so many things, and I'm like, that's awesome. I didn't like it that much. I don't think I'm gonna go back to fix it to see what changed. So unless like a very specific circumstance, like, oh, I meet somebody romantically and they're super into Bleach and they're like, you gotta watch it, and I'll be like, all right, for you, like, rewatch this or something like that. But of my own volition, it's not happening. Like, again, finite time on Earth. I'm glad it's better, but I did my time.
I'm a weird person to ask this question because I do have fascination with the different versions of certain things. As long as there's something that I'm passionate about. I once, and Skitch can tell you about this, had a 90-minute long argument with someone about whether or not Prince of Tennis was bad. And the only thing that Skitch, who was there with like 3 other people with us while we were at a con, just watching us argue for that long stretch of time, the only thing he took from it was what inevitably you guys were actually disagreeing over, you realized was you were talking about the manga and she was talking about the anime. So And I mean, I do think that, like changes between stuff are fascinating sometimes. I did like multiple projects in the past that were about that. Like when I talked about, like Speed Racer compared to, the live action movie compared to the original anime and manga and stuff. And I was planning to do other stuff in that series, and then I decided I didn't want to do videos anymore, basically. Or like in 2017 or something like that, I got a bug to like, hey, I want to compare like directly the sub and dub versions of Yu-Gi-Oh! GX, and I did that for a little stretch of
Yeah.
time. Just so sometimes I do find that to be fascinating. In terms of recommending a certain version, I feel like you kind of have to put yourself in the shoes of the person that you're making the recommendation to.
Yeah.
And independent of what you think is the superior version, try, if you want someone to get into something, to recommend what you think they will like more.
Yep.
And that can be a couple of different things. The one thing I will advise against in general is, like what you were describing with the Zack Snyder thing. If someone's like, I didn't like that, and someone's like, oh, but you didn't see the good version, don't be that guy. Don't do that. Because it's not what they want to hear almost all the time.
Yeah, I will agree. I generally try to be very cognizant of who I'm recommending something to and why, and trying to go off of that. I would recommend this to somebody who already has an interest in Bleach. Maybe they've read the Thousand Year Blood arc and they were like, I think it was kind of dope. And I'd be like, yeah, you probably like the anime. It sounds like it makes it even better. Or I'd watch it, or I'd like tell someone to see it who has like an interest in the artistic intention of the medium, like somebody who's just like, yes, I find this very interesting as a part of like the larger culture of which we're in. I want to be able to make these comparisons to be like, yes, the thing about Kubo is that the manga actually was missing these details, and that's someone who would probably really appreciate seeing the differences.
Yeah, I agree.
All right. I think this is me then. This is from Jay Coggins. What is your favorite manga with the protagonist's name in the title? So, I have two answers for this.
Mm-hmm.
One, Eyeshield 21. Two, if you're a coward and you say that doesn't count, then Majin Tante Nagami Nero.
That's a very good answer because, there are some manga that you would say like, oh, it's a reference to them, but Eyeshield 21 it's his actual code name. So
Yeah.
that's a very good answer. I like that. To not repeat, I will say Ippo is certainly one that's up there. And to kind of play off of the code version, I would also say Full Metal Alchemist.
Okay, that's a good one.
Full
That is a good name. Yeah, that is a good code name that characterized. What are your favorite? This is like tangent, but we're actually kind of at the end of the question, so we might be vamping for a little bit here. What is your favorite like WWE nickname? You know how like wrestlers just get titles a lot of the time. I've been thinking about that recently because I watched like a TikTok that was just like, here are some of the best. It's like the Ring General, the CEO,
Right.
like all that kind of stuff.
I think the Ring General is a great.
The Ring General is a great name.
It's very good. This is answering the opposite of what you said, but I have always been greatly annoyed by Bobby Lashley's title, the Almighty.
The Almighty.
Because it's ALL space mighty, and it's like, is this a My Hero Academia reference? Because that's the only explanation I can think of. I know we can copyright it this way, but it doesn't make grammatical sense unless there's an actual explanation for it.
It is one of those unnecessary ones. I always liked Shelton Benjamin, the Gold Standard. Was like a great, like iconic kind of name when you were like, yeah, I get it. Especially when he like spray painted his hair gold for that run.
I wish that the one Billy Gunn wasn't such a stupid nothing gimmick, because that's a good name.
Yeah.
Just straight up. New Japan, like everyone's got a title like that, so it's very good for that kind of thing. Because you get some crazy ones like there's Ishii, who is Stone Pitbull,
Okay,
which
that's a
just
good
kind of
one.
like tells you everything you need to know about him. I've always liked Sonata, and I liked his title before, which was Cold Skull. Doesn't
Okay.
really make sense, but it sounds cool. Of
I just realized you were wearing a skull shirt full of cats.
course I am. Well,
Yes.
you've seen this before.
I know. It was just a moment. It was like hearing Cold Skull, and I was like, yeah, Nick would love the name Cold Skull. That actually.
Sonata was my favorite New Japan wrestler until he turned heel for no reason recently.
Aww.
He joined Bullet Club. What the fuck was he thinking?
Foolish move.
Yeah. Um, there's so many really, really, really good ones. And I like the really weird ones too. Like Okada, he's the Rainmaker, and it's like because and it's just because it's like he's money, so like dollar money would rain down during his entrance, but then you just kind of like hear it and it just sounds cool.
Yeah.
Um, in terms of WWE names, I mean Stone Cold Steve Austin's just like
Stone Cold's a very good one, unfortunately.
It just rolls off the tongue when
Yeah.
you say it all in one phrase. Modern guys, I do really like the wordplay of the American Nightmare, which apparently Cody stole from his brother. Apparently Dustin was doing that first.
Sounds about right, honestly.
So yeah, there's some really good ones out there.
Yeah, really, really good ones. Really, really good ones. We do have some last kind of questions here from Knopf4. It's going to be very hard to read this though, unfortunately, because Knopf kind of they're like formatted in without like rap text affiliated to it. So I'm going to try to peel back some of the things here. Dear Quinn, watching Last Jedi in 2017. And I think I make oh, that's it. Oh, evil monkey paw. I don't care what the consequences are. I wish Captain Phasma would just go away. She's just a lot of buildup for a character that does nothing. And Nick watching Rise of the Skywalker starring the Knights of Ren screaming monkey paw. I assume that is a reference to something that happens in episode 9. I did not watch that one.
Oh my god! I'm angry that I've been through this and you haven't now.
No, why would I have watched that movie? Like the second I heard Palpatine came back, I was like, okay, so we're done. Like we don't need to watch this anymore.
Wait,
was this a thing between us?
No, I just didn't know that you hadn't seen it.
No, I've watched the last like 15 minutes. I watched enough to see the scene where a bunch of characters are like, "Rey, you could do it, Rey. I never met you, but you ruled."
Look,
Rey.
Ahsoka made it into a mainline Star Wars movie, guys.
Yeah, I'm like Liam Neeson's in there somewhere. I'm pretty sure.
I mean that last 15 minutes does not cover it.
No, I've listened to people talk about it. It sounds miserable. Like, don't they have to like at some point, like? They're like, we have to follow the map, and the map is the curvature of this knife that I guess this planet's topography hasn't changed.
Perfectly fits.
Yeah, it hasn't changed in like 10,000 years or whatever the fuck. Like, it just sounds miserable. So
everything that's set up in the previous movie, where it's like a Jedi can come from anywhere, completely undone. It's like, no, actually, she was Palpatine's granddaughter. Like, what the fuck?
That's the thing that I don't want to see. I was like, I liked Last Jedi. I thought Last Jedi was pretty solid. Like, it had some flaws, but like,
it did, but
it was more exciting than Episode 7, which was just A New Hope all over again. Like, it was different.
It was more interesting.
Yeah.
Yes. And anyone who says like, "Oh, it's like," you need to watch more movies. Like,
yeah, or just get better, like build better taste. Like you can't, like I don't know, like yeah, watch more movies or something. It has been said, a lot has been said about the last entry in the sequel trilogy, but what I hate most about Episode 9 is that it has the idea for a solid idea for a completely separate trilogy that is just shoved at the end of a completely separate story and crashes the narrative potential of both plot lines. It's basically a compilation of various legend stories where the Emperor comes back with the addition of a descendant who needs to fall so that the dark side can possess him. Uses called his minions chasing her, and you've got a fantastic setup for a trilogy that can explore a lot of ideas, and they just waste it. With that off my chest and a thoroughly dead horse beaten, what are some instances in your minds of storylines that are just completely wasted, just plots that could have been great on their own if they weren't sharing space with other stories, or if it just felt like the writers got bored of it?
I feel like I talk about this anytime that like we just come across it whenever we're going over, the manga. Um, Eden Zero has so many wasted plot lines because it's got such a breakneck pace,
Yeah.
um, especially in the latter half, that you can just point to a lot of them, and it just bam, 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 bam. There's a wasted idea. There's a wasted idea. The entire time skip is a wasted plot line in
Yes.
general. Just the idea of like, oh, everything's going to be different now, but everything's going to be really boring in this new timeline. You know, I had some problems with the way that Undead Unluck, reaches conclusion, but that was still a solid like 2 years of stuff where I was really, really enjoying. Like, oh, this is a remix version of stuff we've seen before, but it's just the most obvious, like, oh, everything's fine version for everything in Eden Zero. And to the degree that some of it just doesn't make any sense. Like, why do some characters even know each other if, like, the things that they're supposed to be working with don't happen?
I want to, I guess, pull. I just had one. I lost it. Oh, oh. Food Wars, where we felt like we were going to get the end of the series and have oh god, what was it? Soma go up against Joichiro. Like it felt like that was like a showdown we were kind of building to, and then deal with his conclusion with Erina, and then they were like,
his whole reason for going to the school was so that he could surpass his dad, and that's just never really addressed.
It was like, instead, what if we deal with a new rival your age who also is maybe interested in Erina, but like, just kind of clumsily done, just not good.
And then it turns out they're siblings, I guess.
Or something like that, yeah. I'm sure there's 1,000 wrestling examples for this that we could easily say where you're like, oh, this was like a kind of cool idea, and then they did nothing with it. Belt collector Kenny Omega, where he got 3 belts and then he just kind of stood there with them for a while. And gosh, WWE has like 1,000 of those where you're like,
so many wasted potential. Honestly, I'm going to stand up and say it, that I think that almost anything Mustafa Ali was ever associated with had a chance, and then they were just like, nah, he's small, and they didn't do anything with him. I feel like he could have made Retribution good.
That's the one that's very tough, but if he had made that work, he would have definitely been a big star for it, because that was tough to get over.
It would have been hard, but he tried, and then they didn't put the stuff that he was doing on TV. So it was like, all right, well, I guess this is over then.
Yeah, honestly, it's tough to even like pin down one or two. Like, there's just so many wrestling ones where you're just like, yeah, if they had like given it to this guy when he was hot, that probably would have been pretty cool instead of like wasting my time. Every Bray Wyatt feud essentially ever, like, hey, here's this guy, he's gonna be weird and cryptic. He's gonna lose a lot, and then he's gonna start a new feud where he's weird and cryptic.
Quinn, they're doing it again, and he's dead.
Oh my god. Let the man fucking rest in peace.
Because they did the whole thing, because, Bo Dallas is now Uncle Howdy, and he's leading the group of, like, outcasts. They're the Wyatt Six. And
is there like, an intentional emphasis on the 6? Like, it's got, like, 7 X's?
No, it's the Wyatt Sick. So they're all sick-minded, basically.
Oh, my God. So spelled like SICKS?
Yes, and there's 5 members of the group as well, kind of maybe with the implication of like the 6th one is like, Bray
You know what? I was gonna shit on it, but this is what the villain of Majin Tanta Nakamu Neru essentially did, was he called himself Sick, so you know what? Sometimes it can work.
So they did a whole thing where, like, they were, appearing and attacking people, they were doing tag matches, and they were, like, crushing, like, Chad Gable's new heel group and stuff for a bit. And then they got into a feud with Karrion Kross's stable, which I can't remember the name of.
I'm a little grateful that I have no ability to help you on this. I have zero. You just started throwing names at me. I was like, I didn't realize still employed. All right, interesting.
Well, he got fired and came back anyway.
Okay.
So, and then they just had Karrion Kross just hit his finishing move on Uncle Howdy and pin him. So it's like, oh,
so that's done.
All right. I guess it's done, and so
we're just kind of done with this story now. All right, fair enough.
Yeah, and it's like, all right, well, I guess you're not doing the follow through thing. Okay, all right, and that just happens all the time with so many different things. But it's got its advantages and disadvantages. Sometimes it's like, hey, you need to do the improv thing, and that's actually like in order to go back to the Star Wars point of um episode 8 is very much like an improv continuation of episode 7 of like, let me take this in a weird new direction off of the base that you have started. And then they gave it back to JJ Abrams, who was like, and then I'm going to pretend that whole thing was
I'm gonna been like, yeah, but about that, what if Rey wasn't from Nobody's? What if she was from somebody really important? And you're like, all right. There is also a continuation. There's several questions actually in here. While we're on the subject of Star Wars and its continuities, do either of you have an opinion on Legends versus new canon? And I don't actually know what is considered the difference. To my understanding, everything that wasn't the movies that happened before episode 7 is just like non-canon unless they feel like it should be. So I think Revan and like Knights of the Old Republic is technically considered canon, but I don't know exactly like to what degree or anything like that. I never read the book, so I have no context there.
Essentially anything that they don't say is canon is now non-canon. I think is the easiest way of summarizing it. And there were, of course, stories that were told in novels and stuff that involved characters from the original trilogy. Some of them were controversial. For example, like, you know, there was an author who got people mad because he killed off Chewbacca, that kind of thing. I don't know enough about it, but I think that it's just one of those things of like, we have retroactively changed our canon rules, which makes it confusing because it's not a hard line. So it's like when DC did it about 15 years ago, and it's like, we're resetting everything except Batman and Green Lantern because those are selling well, and we don't want to mess with that.
What is the worst fandom you've witnessed in a fandom you're a part of? Have you ever been part of a fandom that hated almost as much as the thing you enjoyed that you were a fan of? And wonder how you could be a part of that fandom.
Man, it's hard to think of that.
I'll be honest, I tend to just divorce myself from fandom in a lot of ways. Like, if I want to share it, I try to just find like-minded people. But like, if somebody's like a fan of something and like actively hates it, I'm like, I just don't understand why you're here. Like, go do something else. I don't know who this is for, but we're not going to vibe.
I've definitely seen some very outrageous takes on media that I like, but it's never like something I directly experience. It's something I hear about in legend afterwards, where people are like, "Hey, check this out." I think the one thing that I was the closest to being on the ground floor for was someone saying that One Piece isn't political, and I was like, "All right, cool. You don't understand anything. You're dumb. Thanks." Yeah, it's some people you just kind of like have to like accept. Nope, no, just put them to the side because you're not going to reach them in any way.
Yeah, that happens sometimes. There's a continuation here about Star Trek and Lord of the Ring being places that seem really cool fandom wise, but no one wants to get into it. And Naf is asking, do you two have any nerd homework that you just can't will yourself to do, even though you think you should? And I will say, I, for a very long time, kind of kept intentional blind spots in my nerd knowledge because I didn't like knowing everything. But eventually I was like, you know what? I kind of like the commercials showing the new Doctor Who. I'm going to watch a couple episodes of the new Doctor Who, and I checked that out. And for years I was like, yeah, I love Star Wars. I just don't think Star Trek is for me. Then Austin was like, we're going to do a Star Trek season of Dice Funk. So I was like, all right, I'll watch a season of Star Trek, and it was Deep Space Nine. I was like, this shit rules. I'm going to watch almost all of it, basically.
Great series, yeah.
I eventually do find my way into them and stuff like that. But there's still some stuff that I'm like, I don't know, maybe one day I'll get to it. Like, I think of like the Discworld books of something that's like so huge and so big that I'm like, I have zero experience with this. And I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to. Same way with like Brandon Sanderson's books. I'm just like, I don't know if I'm going to find like the time to engage with this and like actually make this like a nerd thing, because I'm trying to work on it. You know, I got through another Studio Ghibli movie today. I watched Totoro for the first time, and I was like, all right, I'm working through this backlog that I have. We'll see what I can get to in the future.
Yeah, I mean, like, there's already enough media out there that like people occasionally like say like, "Hey, shouldn't you check this out?" And I'm just like, "Nah, there's only so much time in the day to like consume stuff." I think that a lot of my biggest blind spots are gaming related,
Yeah.
because I stopped regularly playing video games like in college, essentially. I stopped having the latest console and everything. So the stuff I want to play, I typically like go to like years after it's popular because I've seen enough of it that I'm like, oh, now I do definitely want to play it.
Oh my gosh, Nick,
Um,
I gotta do an as explained by manga for Final Fantasy X with you.
Specifically, Final Fantasy X. There's
Yes.
so much Final Fantasy.
What's the one I like the most?
All right, I mean, like I mean, Final Fantasy is kind of wide open for me because it's something that can safely say I am never going to play a Final Fantasy game. It takes too long.
Oh
So
yeah. Oh yeah.
and and in general, like I don't tend to like be into RPGs. There are exceptions here and there, where like I'll get into something, but generally speaking, like popular RPGs, nah,
Sure.
just not something that I'm willing to put the time into. Almost any game that's like, oh, this is like an immersive experience. You could spend like 20 hours shining shoes and not actually play the plot of the game. Is like, I don't care about so much of that. Like Nicole is really, really into Breath of the Wild and Tears of the
Mm.
Kingdom. I played through both games once. I might go back and try them out a little bit more in the future, but I'm kind of like I'm kind of like happy with
You're
the
done. You're
experiences that
like
I had.
I experienced everything in this that I wanted to.
I got to do all the shrines. I got to do all the routes and stuff like that. I got to a point where I was like, I really do want to get all of the like the spirit power ups in Tears of the Kingdom, but I have to fight the 3-headed dragon things. That's not going to happen. So,
Yeah, it's real. It's true. And we have a final question here then. Related, is there any piece of media that you've never been able to get into, even though you've always enjoyed seeing parodies of it or fans discussing it? And I will say, I have one. I don't know if this counts as like media or a genre particularly, but one thing I have always wanted to be able to get into because it seems extremely cool is speed running. But I
mm,
cannot actively watch it of my own volition. I just do not get it. It's one of those things that I'm like, so games done quick just happened, and a
mm,
friend of mine had it on the background, and I basically never paid attention to it except for one period to simp on the attractive woman who was doing the speed run, whose voice was like absolute fucking velvet to me. But outside of that, I was truly just like I just don't. I think it's cool, but I like this is all the stuff that I don't like about video games.
yeah, I think that it's very tricky because like I do find the idea of it very, very fascinating, but as part of the fact that I, am not a gamer and I'm not really into stuff, I don't have the level of appreciation for someone doing them,
Yeah.
super quickly. I don't have that level of intimate knowledge and appreciation for the technical skill involved for a lot of things that are very super popular for people to play. I can see something and I can see people do black magic and make stuff happen. And it's like, yeah, well, that's cool. That's something I'll never do. So
Yeah.
that's kind of it.
Erie Gray is bringing up part of the reason why I feel like I should too, is that there are so many queer women in speed running. Like it just feels like I should genetically be predisposed to liking it, and I really just have to struggle to keep it on. It's just not my thing. Weirdly, the inverse though. One of the things I'm most on top of now is if I need background noise recently, I usually throw on Street Fighter tournaments. So I am like weirdly intimate with the current day meta game of Street Fighter 6. Whereas like all these other things that I've just like never found the time for are just like falling to the background and stuff like that. All my math skills falling out of my head, but like
Mm.
somewhere deep down to me, I'm like, oh, they're gonna go with Rashid. That's gonna be interesting, but that's a high tempo play. Let's see what they're gonna do.
To give a very weird case of something that I was into that I don't want to do the homework to get back into because it's not homework, it's self-flagellation. Is
Okay.
that um, I because I watched Arcane Season 2 recently, I've started watching some stuff on League of Legends in terms of like, lore stuff. And I do think that there are a lot of characters in League of Legends that's like, I would love to like know more about them, see more stuff involving them and stuff. And so I've been trying to figure out, I've been trying to do research on like, what's the best way to experience this without playing League of Legends again?
How could I really capture these characters without installing that fucking game one more time?
Or can I have a version of the game that doesn't have the community attached to it at all? Like, can you do something that like has like a private server set up so that I don't have to deal with anyone that is involved in that at all? And because even then, like, there are parts of the game that like I do want to like experience playing again, but I don't want to play against anyone that plays League of Legends. It not even like the last time that I went to was a few years ago, and I did only ARAM, and I also muted like the chat entirely, and it was almost okay.
Yeah.
But so
I think the last time I had fun in that game was just playing with friends against AI, and we all just talked about how cool our characters were. You're like, I got 38 kills, I rule. You're like, yeah, dog.
That sounds like a fun time.
Yeah, I was like, that's probably the only way you could get me into. I have a couple friends who are playing Marvel Rivals right now, and I keep kind of getting like sub invites to join. Like, oh, Quinn should play, and I keep trying to say it in the nicest way possible, but like, I've been through this hell, and not just in League of Legends. I've played multiple MOBAs in my life that I am done with this shit now. I just cannot do it anymore.
Yeah, because what's the one that's popular right now?
Marvel Rivals is the big one.
It is. That's like an FPS, isn't it?
It's an Overwatch clone, which is basically kind of like a slight deviation. It's the same kind of thing of like team fighting, as like the gameplay element. So,
well, yeah, and so I think that about covers it in terms of our answers there, because we've been doing this for a good chunk of time. We got through our questions. Hey,
that's it. We're all caught up. So if you guys have any more questions you want to ask us, we'll probably do another Q&A sometime this year, I imagine. There's multiple breaks in the year. So feel free to send in some questions. You just go to the Google Doc. There's a tab that says questions for Q&A. Scroll all the way to the bottom, and you can add whatever you'd like in here, as long as it's not a weird question. But we answer those too. So I guess do whatever you want, Yeah.
We will be back with a regular episode next week here on twitch.tv/RoloT. Recording will be sometime around 7:30 Eastern in the evening. To know when it goes live, join our Discord server. It'll be linked wherever this gets posted. And also follow us on social media. We're on BlueSky, Nick F Time, RoloT, Weekly Manga Recap. Also follow the WMR Votes account for stuff involving, like favorite characters, favorite series and MVP. And also the, year-end supplemental stuff is going to be related to all that. Get your votes, get your nominations in, and keep on doing it for the big episode at the end of the year. And we're on Podbean. weeklymangarecap.podbean.com is where all the audio files get hosted. We are also on iTunes, Spotify, and so on, places that the feeds go to. Video versions on youtube.com/weeklymangarecap, which has an opening sequence by Milo Jack Stillitz and Winston Del Cheddar. Occasionally has title card work done by Steve Man. I almost forgot his name for some reason. Steve Man's art you can find anywhere. Just search for Steve Man art and you'll find it.
I believe he's on BlueSky right now. So if you're also searching for people on BlueSky, you can find Steve Man there.
And we also have a Patreon, patreon.com/weekly manga recap. We recorded very recently a As Explained by Manga.
Yes.
Because Nick marathoned and rewatched the thing recently, and then forced Quinn to listen to him talk about it. And isn't that what that entire
that's what friendship is. I enjoy so much getting to listen to my friends tell me about what they're interested in. You could please do it anytime you want. I will love to hear it.
Oh, and I think that's gonna about do it.
Yeah. We will see you all. We're working on Gamblefish. We're having a great time. Clothes are flying off. It's going well. So stay tuned. I don't think that's going to be next week, but it will be soon. But we'll be back with some manga. We're going to be back with a lot of manga next week.
A lot of manga.
So stay tuned for that, guys. Bye.
Goodbye.